I'm going to get started and then we'll go into the questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Perfect. I'm excited today to welcome Greg Varner to the show, Senior Vice President, North America at Straightons Partners. Welcome to the show, Greg. Can you give us a bit of an introduction about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Bianca. First of all, it's great to be here. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to lead transformation programs across various industries: technology, consumer products, sports technology, and private equity backed businesses. One thing that I've found remarkably consistent is while every organization has different products, markets, and strategies, the reasons transformations succeed or fail are surprisingly similar. And my passion is about helping leadership teams bridge that gap between strategy and execution by creating alignment, improving cross functional collaboration, and building organizations that are able to execute consistently.
That's amazing. Thanks so much, Greg, for being here on the show today. I'm really excited about the topic that we are going to cover today, breaking silos, the missing link between strategy and execution. So I'm actually going to get straight into our questions for today and pick your brain on a few things and a bit of practical insights from your side. Many organizations invest heavily in strategy, technology, and transformation initiatives, yet execution still often fails short. In your experience, what is the biggest disconnect between strategy and execution?
Well, research has shown for years that somewhere between 70 and 80% of transformations fail to achieve their intended outcomes. And what's interesting is that the reasons are remarkably consistent. Most organizations don't fail because of strategy, they fail because strategy is not translated into aligned execution. There's four key areas for this disconnect between strategy or the ambition and execution or the results. And those four things are: one, leadership alignment breaks down; two, there's weak execution systems; three, there's siloed operating models; and four, there's cultural resistance and fatigue. Most executive teams don't lack ambition. They struggle to create organizational alignment behind that ambition. So strategy creates direction and alignment creates momentum.
That's amazing. Anything else to add to that, Greg, or can we continue to our next question?
The only thing I would like to add is that I actually just saw a research, from this with Harvard Business Review, McKinsey, Bain, etc. And it's really surprising that all of these companies that are well renowned come to the same conclusion that it's not really strategy, it's about the execution. There's oftentimes a perception from leadership, even, that they are aligned, but then their alignment seems to fail when it comes to the execution. And I think that's really the starting point, is that's not the strategy, but it's about creating that alignment across the organization. And I'm sure we can go through that when we discuss.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's definitely something to really think about and, further the discussion on. We all know the term silo, and it's frequently used in many organizations. How do silos typically manifest themselves, and why do they remain one of the biggest barriers to successful transformation?
I think silos aren't created because people are adverse to working together or intentionally trying to avoid one another. Silos are a consequence of organizational growth. Companies want to be efficient, so they facilitate this. Companies look for specialized expertise, functions optimize internally, departments become operationally efficient, integration then becomes harder across those, and organizations then become less effective collectively. So, in terms of transformation, to me, it's about collectively working together. And this means that Leadership needs to build bridges to understand what the others in the organization need in order to work more effectively together. And organizations, from my experience, rarely fail inside a function, they fail between functions. And I'd just like to reflect upon what's going on right now with the World Cup. You know, we see that most successful football teams, or soccer teams, if you will, are not the ones with the most talented individuals. They're the ones that move the ball the most effectively together. And I think business is exactly the same. Every function has a role, but the value is only created when the handoffs between those functions work.
That's amazing, Greg. And I really liked, the example that you just shared about the soccer teams and how the individuals really, pass the ball, etc., and, use that. Really something to think about. Many times we hear that transformation is a people challenge rather than a technology challenge. Why is leadership alignment so critical to breaking down silos and driving sustainable change?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to put this into perspective from the top, that leadership is creating
Yeah.
clarity before the organization can create aligned execution. So imagine a CEO were to say, our priority is profitable growth. So
Mm.
what does that mean if you're in sales, if you're in operations, if you're in finance, if you're in HR or customer success? Each of those departments may have a different perspective on that, and they can make a rational decision to support that, but that could potentially create friction elsewhere. So it's really important that when there's an objective, that there's shared language. So that way, when interpretation is diverging, execution is going to diverge. So we need to make sure that we have aligned understanding, so that way everyone's working in parallel and in an integrated way. We need to have shared priorities. So leadership is showcases through allocation of time and resources what is important. And when each department has different priorities, friction is inevitable. Need to have shared metrics, and those shared metrics shape behavior by sharing the same goal and creating alignment in what needs to get done. Need to have shared decision principles and have rules where there's trade-offs when they appear. If these are unclear, then teams will escalate everything. So clarity is not communication. Clarity is in line interpretation.
That's amazing, Greg. You've really shared some powerful insights so far through this discussion and the various different questions we've been chatting about. I want to understand what are some of
Perfect.
the early warning signs of leadership teams or business units who are not aligned? And how does this misalignment impact organizational performance and execution? If you could share with us your take on this based on your experience, that would be great, Greg.
Yeah. Yeah, I would, going back to what I was saying previously, I think that misalignment typically appears operationally first, not strategically. And the warning signs include decisions taking longer, things getting escalated or everything getting escalated in the worst case, meetings replacing decisions, and initiatives are multiplying. And the result is that people become very busy, but the organization moves more slowly. So instead of seeing results coming up, you see people doing a lot of work, but since it's not aligned, the results are not coming. And the way to solve these things, in my view, is to focus on decision rights. So empowering people and empowering them by saying who can decide what without escalation. To having governance, which is about enabling information flow to accelerate decisions, not delay them. And cadence, so having an operational rhythm in line with the speed of the execution. And initiative load, so this is to me the biggest risk that I've seen in a lot of companies is that there's only a certain capacity that an organization can manage. So too much change will impact the company because organizations rarely lack ambition, but they fail from overload. So to me, execution friction is usually a design problem, not a motivational problem.
Greg, I want to chat a bit about collaboration, specifically cross functional collaboration. It sounds really straightforward in theory, but is often difficult in practice. What are the most common obstacles organizations face, and what practical steps can leaders take to overcome them?
I think that some people may think that collaboration is working together more. I think it's about making better decisions together. And most collaboration is not because people, or most collaboration that's not happening is not because people don't like each other. And it's not because collaboration is coming from people that like one another. It's about sharing a common objective. And every function naturally optimizes its own objectives. So, for instance, if we talk about sales, they're optimizing revenue. Finance is optimizing cash or cash flow. Operations is optimizing efficiency, and so on. And none of these are wrong. It's all about optimizing business. And this is then where leadership comes in. And leaders need to build the bridges by creating understanding across functions, aligning incentives and measures of success, establishing clear ownership and accountability, and creating regular forums where decisions are made together rather than handed off. One clear example of what could be done is just in functional team meetings, inviting others to come in to present their perspective of what's important from sales for finance, for instance, or operations with finance, et cetera. So that way you have an understanding of what your teammates require for you to do your job. And I think that's where building bridges really helps. So continuing my football analogy from before, every player on the pitch has a role, and every player understands how their role contributes to winning. And business is no different. Great organizations do not eliminate expertise, they connect it.
That's really amazing, and I really love your take on this cross-functional collaboration. That it's not necessarily working together, but the decision making. And I really, really like the way you phrase that, and I think it's going to be extremely valuable to the audience. Greg, I want to go into a bit of a real world example. If possible, from your side, can you share an example with us where improving collaboration across functions significantly improved execution, effectiveness, transformation outcomes, or business performance? It would be really great to hear from your experience, or if you've gone through any such example, if you could share that with the audience.
Absolutely. There's one project that comes to mind, and I I came into the project, and the first thing that I was told was that it's deep red, according to the project plan. And in fact, I was told by one person in the C-suite that it was deep red. So what was deep red according to this definition? It was a project that was intended to last 6 months, but it was already 6 months behind schedule when I showed up. So a critical element in this project was to deliver the project plan on time. Otherwise, a majority of the value would be lost. So my first instinct wasn't to rebuild the plan, it was to understand the situation. So I spent time asking and listening to different functions that were involved, including sales, finance, IT, product, strategy, and so on. And interestingly enough, everyone had a different explanation, not about what we were trying to achieve, but what was the issue. So there was quite a bit of finger pointing, especially since we were 6 months behind on a 6-month project. So when we finally brought the key stakeholders together in one meeting, it became clear that the delay was coming from one area. And this took actually a couple of months to figure this out. So I'm simplifying it a little bit. There was a lot of discussions, but there was one key unlock in that meeting. And that area represented less than 10% of the overall business value for the project. So 10% represented a 6-month delay. So instead of working towards perfection and completing the whole program, we split it into 2 phases. First, we delivered roughly 90% of the value on time, and then completed the remainder of the 10% 6 months later. So here, going back to what I was saying before, it's really about understanding and building bridges, bringing different parties together to understand. So the breakthrough wasn't technical, it was organizational. We needed a shared understanding of the problem, the situation we were facing.
That's really amazing, and amazing to hear, how you approached that project and what the outcome of that was. I'm going to end off with our final question, Greg. If a CEO or transformation leader wanted to start breaking down silos tomorrow, what are the top 3 actions they should prioritize in the next 90 days to better align strategy, people, and execution?
Yeah. So you've heard me now repeating this a couple of times, but I would I would approach this as a transformation or building bridges kind of approach. So I would start first with aligning leadership. So bringing together that shared language, shared priorities, shared metrics, shared decision principles. And this is critical to reduce ambiguity before it cascades into execution. So that way it's understood, as the example, profitable growth, what that actually means for the company, for every department or every area that's involved. The second thing would be simplify execution. So here it's reducing the number of places where decision stalls. So this is about getting that decision rights, having the right governance and information flow, providing the right cadence and operational rhythm, ensuring that the initiative load, that there's not too many activities that are going on that'll dilute the impact of what's most important. The third thing I would say is to create a connection by building repeatable cross-functional rituals. And this is what I was describing as building bridges to have shared goals, reviewing in appropriate places, and then to have shared accountability to achieve the success. Underlying all of these, in my view, is an additional leadership responsibility, which is elevating the conversation of change with those people that can influence within the organization or act as ambassadors for the change. Then empower the team with the clarity and authority to act, and energize the team through connection with autonomy and cross-functional integration around the shared purpose, and celebrating those successes through the journey.
That's amazing, Greg. Greg, I want to thank you for your time today, for all these powerful insights that you've shared, your knowledge, and for taking the time to join us on BPM Real Talk today. I want to end off if you have any final thoughts to share with the audience today.
Yes, I actually do have one thought. And I think that a lot of companies and people think that organizations may have one key to unlock what is a perfectly designed organization. But I don't think that that's the case. I think every organization should be viewed as designed to deliver the results it currently wants to achieve. And if we want different results, we have to redesign how decisions are made, how functions interact, and how leaders create alignment. So there's not one perfect way of working, but there's a way that you need to look at how to get decisions made, creating alignment, interacting, and alignment.
Thank you so much, Greg. To our viewers, thank you for joining us today. Just a reminder to stay connected with BPM Real Talk. We have many more exciting episodes coming. Greg, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.